The Old Testament prophet Amos has been called the prophet of justice. This morning, he is crying out to us over all the centuries. He is calling out for justice to roll down like waters and righteousness like ever-flowing streams. Like democratic nations, prophets, priests, and pastors are very, very nice until they're not. Today, I am not feeling nice. Let me start out by playing a recording of some remarks made by a journalist named Naomi Wolf, who is an American liberal progressive feminist author, journalist, and a former political advisor to Al Gore and to Bill Clinton. Ms. Wolf made these following remarks in 2015 to a group of journalists. So pardon me for get this thing going.
What do you think of what happened in Boston? When we were looking for a pressure cooker and two teenagers, you know, and then they took over the whole city and shut it down, and to me that looked a whole lot like martial law.
Yeah. Oh, God, I can't believe... See, this is why I didn't want to give this talk, because I knew that we'd have this conversation, and now it's on the record. All right, let me take a step back. And we have to deal with it. Let me take a step back and a deep breath, because this is a very painful thing to talk about. So, all over the world, we know, it's well established, the State Department and intelligence agencies engage in theater, and it's what they do, it's spycraft, to create spectacles and events that people may not realize are spectacles and events, but that, well, like the overthrow of Mossadegh in the 50s in Iran. They'll funnel money to protesters, they'll, fly people in to infiltrate protesters, they'll create fake newspapers, and so on. So we know that this happens in countries around the world. I believe that a law has been passed in the United States. I think it's part of the Defense Authorization Act. I need to confirm this. That, now makes it legal to propagandize American citizens. Do we know about that? Yeah, it's true. And is it in the NDAA or is it in something else? Do we know?
It's a separate bill.
It's a separate bill. And it's been passed. It's now law? Do we know what the...
2 years ago.
Do we know what the name of it is?
I don't remember, but I reported on it.
Oh, thank you. Will you send me the link?
Yes.
Thank you. So what this means is, and as a journalist to say these words, I can't tell you with what a heavy heart I say them, but we've entered an era in which it is not crazy to assess news events to see if they're real or not real. And in the United States as well as overseas. And in fact, it's kind of crazy not to.
Now, the act that Ms. Wolf was referring to is the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012, it was written 2012, passed in Congress in 2013, which amends the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948 to authorize the Secretary of State and the Broadcasting Board of Governors to provide for the preparation and dissemination of information intended for foreign audiences abroad about the United States, including its people, its history, and the federal government's policies through press, publications, radio, motion pictures, the internet, and other information media, including social media. What are social media? Twitter, Google, Facebook, and through information centers and instructors. The Smith-Mundt Modernization Act was sponsored by Representative Matt Thornberry, a Texas Republican. We heard the applause of the the audience to Miss Wolf's comments because they were all like-minded journalists who were outraged in 2013 or 2015, when she said these things, at the possible use of State Department and intelligence agency, CIA, and other materials to disseminate opinions or views with which they might not agree. In fact, a journalist from the Washington Post wrote an article critical of the shelter-in-place lockdown the governor of Massachusetts requested during the hunt for the Boston bombers. And that's where we first heard the language shelter-in-place. The complaint from the liberal journalist was it looked like martial law. Now, some may have thought that Pastor Dave has been taking objection to practices that the CIA, the State Department, and its media, and I say its media because it's not ours, was taken care of years ago by Senator Frank Church's examination of influence by the CIA on U.S. media long ago, way back in 1975. Did not Pastor play recordings to that effect several Sundays ago? Don't you remember? Surely there is no such Department of State or CIA infiltration of the media today. That would be crazy. Surely that is true. But if so, how does one explain the suppression of a news article written by the fourth largest newspaper in the United States by social media on the grounds it was misinformation at a time when the country was engaged in a national election? At a time when an off-the-cuff remark can be liked or retweeted out of context hundreds of thousands of times. If you think this is done by one side only, think again. Do you remember Mr. Biden's comment taken out of context when he said, "We have the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in history"? That's out of context. Or do you remember this one? That was, in fact, a campaign slogan, "Good people on both sides." Debunked in early 2017 by Jake Tapper on CNN. If it is true that there is no CIA corrupted media today, how does one explain that both of our two main political parties are calling for the breakup or regulation of today's mammoth social media, that being Facebook, Twitter, and Google? They may appear to have different reasons for wanting so. Perhaps some of them do have different reasons. But both the sides want the breakup of this mammoth organization of social media. But many across the aisle are of exactly the same mind, believe me. If our media is now uncorrupted, how does one explain the repeal of the Smith-Mundt Act to allow media of all kinds to propagandize its own citizens? How does this propagandizing work? How's it done when our media is polarized, light years apart on so many different issues? How can it be that the propagandizing is working if we're hearing the CIA or the FBI or whoever else. You want people to be polarized. You want people to be at each other's throats. Let's take one day, a CIA analyst decides to write a news article which he sends in to CNN. The next day, that very same CIA analyst writes an article diametrically opposed to the one he wrote yesterday and sends that into, well, it used to be Fox News. It will now be Newsmax. Same exact CIA analyst. With opposing views, sent to one place, another one, different one sent to a different medium. These two opposing articles send their respective audiences into fits of hysteria and outrage to such a degree that they may not even notice that the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act was just passed in Congress to make legal the very heinous, horrible thing the CIA agent just did. The CIA agent and his media assets are a beast we keep feeding. The beast feeds on our manufactured outrage. But we're not done yet. I should pause here just for a second to tell you how you deduce this kind of stuff is going on in our government. It's the claim that our government made about the Russians, remember? They're trying to, they use both sides to get, chaos. That's what the CIA always does. That's what the KGB in Soviet Russia used to do. But we're not done yet. On the third day, that same exact CIA analyst writes an article saying that the Russians did it. And he sends that article into both CNN and to Newsmax at the same time. And voila! CNN and Fox News, or Newsmax, whoever will replace Fox News, they are suddenly in agreement that the Russians are to blame. CNN claims it hates the Russians way more than Newsmax does, and Newsmax says, oh no, your hate isn't even close to ours. Our hate is so vast, it makes you look like you're carrying water for Putin. The following year, and here is the coup de grace, the military-industrial info-technological complex is allocated the biggest defense appropriations bill in history in order to counter the Russian whatever it is they did thing, which never actually happened. The prophets of old raised their arms and pointed their fingers at the powerful prince or king. Let justice flow down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. But the waters and the streams cannot flow if we build a dam to stop them. And if we are the folks who are applauding the building of that dam, thinking it will cut off important information to our opposing political citizens' point of view, how I ask you, can that dam ever be taken down? I say to Christian fellow believers, my precious unbelievers, my fellow citizens, whom I love, and for whose my heart just breaks for them. Let justice flow down like waters. Let righteousness flow like an ever-flowing stream. I say to all of us, we are the dam that is blocking the flow of justice and righteousness. We are the machine that feeds the beast of injustice and unrighteousness, whose hunger cannot ever be satisfied. It is our manufactured outrage that turns us all into victims. Now, what can we do? Pastor hasn't said a thing about the election, so okay, we'll do that and then we'll close. What can we do, and how does this apply to the national election? I can be very brief now. You've been prepared, you've heard all that I have said over the last weeks. I've told you what is happening, and now it's happening. You know. And you've heard it this morning, and you'll hear it again and again as we go. And probably next week I'll start a series on resentment, rivalry, and revenge. That's one of them I'm toying with. So I can be brief. There is something we must know, and then there is something we must do. First, we must know that the media and its intel masters does not determine the outcome of an election. Not in this country. Not yet. I don't know how long this stuff has been going on, but probably for decades. Maybe forever. Now there's something else we must do. We must pray for our awakening. Let us then end this sermon in prayer. Let us pray. Holy Father of justice and righteousness, take away our willingness to outrage, by which we are manipulated by forces of evil that wish to pit us against ourselves. Give us patience to wait upon your justice, even in this time of great stress. We ask that you give all of us in our country a clear understanding through the turning of the wheel of justice, so that no matter what